Welcome to Slow Night, Ancient Tales. Tonight, we drift away from the noise of the city and find ourselves in the boundless, verdant fields. We are sharing a classic piece of Korean literature, Lee Hyo-seok's Fields, Deul. It is a meditative journey into nature, a place where the earth breathes, where stories are woven into the wind, and where the human heart finds its simplest, truest rhythm. Let the sound of the grass and the whisper of the stream guide you. Put aside your worries, lean back, and let the evening wash over you. This is your slow night. Chapter 1. Wood whitlow grass, plantains, shepherd's purse, wild strawberries, dandelions, narrow-leaved asters, cowvetch, wild chives, squill, wood sorrel, bitter herbs, stonecrop, amaranth, and goosefoot. The fields are completely covered in a blanket of green. Not a single patch of brown earth can be found anymore. It is a sea of green. Green is more radiant than the color of earth and more complex than the color of snow. When snow lightly coats the ground, there is only white, the purple of the apple tree and the jade of shadows. It is simple, like the bare skin of an unclothed woman. Spring is a woman dressed and adorned, from the color of earth to green. Shouldn't we marvel once more at this breathtaking mystery? Where and when did the earth consume so much dye, only to spit it all out so abundantly all at once when spring arrives? Did it swallow the ocean waters like a whale? Did it unknowingly drink deep of the sky's blue spirit? Does it dissolve into the rainwater, sending it bursting forth from the ground when the season turns? Yet, when you pull up a single blade of grass, only the leaf is green. Why is there no trace of dye on the roots or in the soil? It is much like the secret of dropping chemicals into red water in a test tube, causing it to instantly turn bright blue. The secret chemicals of this universe. Will they ultimately remain unknown? Even if someone teaches the logic of how a single grain of barley multiplies into 10, it seems no one can truly explain the motive of the magic that makes green leaves sprout from that grain. Human wisdom merely circles the edges of this mystery, and the inner workings of this magic seem like a Pandora's box that will never be opened. The meaning beneath the earth covered in green grass is a world beyond, as unreadable as the heart of a woman dressed in green. The softly fluttering posture of the plants is like gently rising music. The thick stems and tender leaves are the measures of a melody. The voluminous stalks are the sound of trumpets, and the slender branches could be called the notes of a geomungo. The emotion felt when moving from allegro into andante, that is the pace of spring. If you lie down on the grass, your heart flutters broadly, drawn by the rhythm of this subtle music. Wood whitlow grass, plantains, dandelions. If I were to pick and eat all these different wild greens, it feels as though my body would be dyed green. It feels as though it must be dyed. It feels as though it would only be right for it to be dyed. Not being dyed would be a lie. It feels as though it absolutely must be dyed. A bird chirps. Is it an oriole? The horizon shimmers. The fields are my world. If you look up at the blue sky endlessly, eventually you feel dizzy, as if your eyes might fall out. It feels as though your eyeballs are cold, dazzling, and blue, like marble balls in a soda bottle that have been plucked out, soaked in blue water, and then pushed back into your flesh. They are glass beads entirely disconnected from the body. That is how clear and distant the sky is. The pain in your eyes feels like a punishment for audaciously staring up at that sky for so long. Certainly my heart feels apologetic. Anyone who can stare straight into the sky for half a day without fear must be the kindest person in the world, or else the most courageous villain. That is how holy the blue sky is. When I turn my eyes away, tears pour down. The fields are dyed deep blue, shimmering before my eyes. At times like this, for some reason, there is not a single cloud. Beside me is a bundle of flowers, violets, bitter lettuce, pasque flowers, bracken, squill, and more. I mix them together, twisting them to start weaving a bouquet. Various flower petals and stamens fall abundantly onto my lap. They are more numerous than scattered pomegranate seeds. I do not know since when I became so fond of the fields. Now they occupy the same position in my heart as a bee, owl of rice, or a book. It is not a theory I read in a book, nor is it logic I heard from someone else. Over several years of spending time with the fields, doing nothing in particular, it seamlessly soaked into my life without reason. As a child, wandering the plains with friends, diving into thorn bushes to pick wild roses, picking cow dung mushrooms to roast in the fire, digging up furrows to find roots, and spending more days in the fields than at home. It feels as though that time has been resurrected and returned. It seems humans are bound to nature by an inseparable tie. Does befriending nature mean retreating from life? Does botanical affection only arrive when animalistic passion fades? Did I come to love nature because I was kicked out of school and forced to retreat from soul? However, the passion I felt when meeting friends in a cramped room, wandering the streets with sharp eyes, getting caught, running, and being chased is the same as the passion I feel now, loving the fields. The joy I feel now is very much like the joy from back then. Just as a hero who sacrifices their life for a belief is not superhuman, a simple man who loves the fields is not subhuman. Even now, while holding on to firm beliefs and flipping through books I used to read in the past, I often lose myself and stare blankly into the sky without meaning. Hakbo, it seems your hometown is finally growing on you. The villagers have started throwing me these words, which are neither mockery nor praise. The neighbor's farmhand I meet at the village entrance often asks in place of a greeting, "Are there many schools of carp in the Haedongji swamp?" He is either thinking about going fishing, or otherwise he asks, "Have the barley heads bowed at Simnijong?" He has started asking for news about the crops. This is proof that I have become closer to the fields and know more about the crops than the villagers themselves. I know every corner of the plains by heart, as if reciting a book. A detailed map of the fields is etched into my mind, and the changes of the 4 seasons are recorded like a chart. I am a man of the fields, and the fields are like my own. I can tell which paddy ridge has the most delicious green soybeans, and which furrow has the thickest potatoes. I can guess which marsh is filled with young bracken, and which barley field will have larks taking flight. I also came to know which corner of the Namdaecheon stream is most abundant with fish. I know where the rapids are swarming with minnows and shiners, which pools hide the bullheads, which rocks the mandarin fish lie beneath, and that to catch certain fish, you must go several miles further up past the railway bridge, and how far out into the plains you must go to scoop up loaches. I am probably the only one who knows where the cherry tree forest across the water is, and where the wild vines grow in Bangchigol. When I was expelled from school and first chased down from the city, the first place I sought out was not a relative's house, nor a friend's house, but truly these fields. The joy I felt when I saw that the aspen trees by the river were still there, that the grass on the Willow Grove bank had not been torn up, and that the orchard's appearance remained unchanged, was a joy too great for words. Isn't the heart that longs for one's hometown simply the feeling of loving its mountains and streams, and being glad to see its plains? Aside from this natural scenery, where else does the shadow of a hometown dearly remain? Does it remain on the crumbling thatched roofs? While it is people who make up a hometown, what is missed more is often its fields and streams. Chapter 3. The season seems to make all things carefree. Animals openly entrust everything to the embrace of the fields. I felt an inexplicable joy upon discovering a bird's nest in the fresh grass. It felt as though I had found something holy, something beautiful. The heart that entirely and safely entrusts its home and family to the earth is holy. Inside the nest, thickly woven with grass and feathers, were about 4 unhatched eggs. Bird eggs, each the size of a green jujube with faint stripes, a thin shell calmly holding a life about to burst forth, a mother's womb that could instantly be cracked into 2 pieces with a click, a cradle of creation. Fearing that I might startle or disturb that quiet cradle, I hesitated to even lay a single finger on the edge of the nest. I just stood there, staring blankly for a long while, before carefully covering it back up with grass and quietly stepping away. It felt as though the eggs would split open at any moment, and life would spring out. It felt as though a bird would flutter up from behind me, fluttering up, breaking the silence, startling the sky and the fields. The thought made my heart joyful. What kind of bird hatches its eggs this late? A bluebird? A bush warbler? Unable to contain my quietly bounding, joyful heart, I thought about singing a song out loud. As I felt this and tried to take a step down the bank, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. It was because a shocking sight caught my eye. Suppressing the urge to burst out laughing, I sat down on the grass. That desire to laugh might have been an extension of the desire I had to sing just moments before. In other words, that shocking scene did not anger or insult my heart. Rather, it evoked the exact same joy as before. It showed me the joy of creation in a common way. In the grassy patch by the stream, a pair of mating dogs were playing. Without fearing the sky, without feeling ashamed of the fields, and without avoiding human eyes, the male and female were openly expressing the freedom of their hearts. The one who felt ashamed was actually me. Flushing red, I felt incredibly awkward watching that breathtaking scene for an aimlessly long time. It is certainly due to the season. For instance, I have never witnessed such play in a freezing winter field. As expected, when the fields are green and birds hatch laid eggs, animals also frolic. I must not be angry or mock that scene. While I was watching, a stone flew toward the pair from somewhere. A snickering laugh echoed, and a second stone flew. The pair, whose bodies were stuck together, finally grew frightened, rolling their eyes nervously, staggering their heavy bodies with awkward steps. I realized then that besides me, another person had been secretly watching the scene from nearby, and a sudden wave of deep shame washed over me. I couldn't even breathe deeply, killing any sign of my presence, left with no choice but to stay completely silent. A third stone flew, and shortly after, a bold burst of laughter erupted as the shadow of a person jumped out from the bushes below. Carrying a large laundry basin on her head, she was waving one hand to chase the dogs away, her shoulders shaking in a posture that showed she couldn't hold back her laughter. I was startled by this sudden figure. Yet, my tense heart also relaxed. It was Oh-bun. It seemed that after finishing her laundry, she had secretly and thoroughly enjoyed watching the scene. However, her surprise when she suddenly saw me was many times greater than my own. She abruptly stopped laughing and froze, nearly dropping the basin on her head. The expression on her face instantly turned dark red and stiffened. Her eyes pointed to the ground, and one hand awkwardly crumpled her apron, not knowing what to do. To rescue her from her deeply embarrassing and awkward situation, which felt like falling into a deep pit, I deliberately forced a voice I didn't truly feel, laughed a generous laugh, and walked down to her side. Damn beasts. It was a scolding I didn't mean, intended only to ease Oh-bun's mind. Even a guy like Deul wouldn't dislike you, that arrogant jerk. Bringing up her personal story out of nowhere was an attempt to divert her attention elsewhere. Deul, a clerk at the county office, had broken off his engagement to Oh-bun and found someone else, complaining late in the game. Oh-bun's family was poor and struggling, so it was certain he broke the engagement because he worried about the various troublesome dealings that would follow marriage. I wasn't the only one criticizing Deul's cunning heart. Most of the villagers condemned the clerk's betrayal. Aren't you angry about being betrayed? I don't know. Oh-bun rather showed irritation and started walking away. Should I teach that guy a lesson? For some reason, I couldn't help but feel a rush of sympathy for her. Why do something so useless? Even while sensing my sympathy, Oh-bun played innocent, and there was something unspeakably profound in her attitude that subtly drew my heart. Her slender figure fading into the distance engraved itself into my mind. Her reddish, firm legs revealed beneath her black skirt, more beautiful than birch trees, shining all the more because of her poverty. It was something deeply desirable that anyone in the world would want. Chapter 4. Because it was Sunday, I was finally able to spend the day on the levee with Munsu for the first time in a while. I couldn't frequently pull him away, as he had to go to school in the city every day. For me, who had no Sundays, there was finally a Sunday. Climbing up to the levee where we could see the ocean, my heart felt wide open and refreshed. The sea breeze was still a bit cold, but it tasted fresh. The grass was sparsely dotted with neat unbloomed sweetbriar buds, and the leaves of the white poplar trees clustered in patches across the levee fluttered and sparkled in the sunlight, looking as if silver dust had been sprinkled on them. Munsu returned a few books he had borrowed and asked about the meaning of several passages he had marked. To him, I was a senior of one day. Helping him understand was a joyful duty. When the study was over and we closed the books to chat, Munsu spoke in a sighing tone. Things at school seemed to be going wrong. He gave various concrete examples and eventually spoke of the narrow circumstances of one particular person. I even got caught reading. Your books were almost confiscated, too, I could guess. Isn't it disadvantageous to associate with me? It's obvious things will go the way they go. It might be more refreshing that way. Talking only about cramped reality felt dull, so the two of us brushed off our knees, stood up, gathered our spirits, and sang. We sang every word and melody we knew. When the singing was done, we took turns standing and giving speeches. We imagined a massive crowd before us and shouted with all the voice we had. We shouted loudly, as if testing whether the ocean waves would ripple or if the birds would be frightened and fall. The only person applauding was a single friend instead of tens of thousands of people. But as we spoke, our minds grew excited and exhilarated. It was excellent training beyond studying. It is a newfound surprise that there is such a free, open field upon this cramped earth. No matter what free words we shouted, there was never any order to stop here. Is the earth narrow, yet wide at the same time? The levee is a refreshing place that untangles the mind, and a day spent with Munsu is always an endlessly joyful day. Chapter 5. The late-season strawberries peeking through the orchard's wire fence, large clusters of western strawberries sprouting red between the leaves. Every time I pass by, I cannot suppress a healthy appetite. Moreover, the appearance of the strawberries bathed in the moonlight looks as though cream has been poured over them, shining even more softly. Sending greedy glances at the desirable fruit and climbing over the wire fence, I certainly did not harshly whip my heart with guilt and reflection, nor was there a need to. Regardless of whose orchard it was, isn't climbing over the fence rather a sort of nature for a man of the fields? A man of the fields also possesses the generosity to tolerate and overlook it. It seems that over these few years I have completely acquired this wild personality. Why is it that, even as I frantically pick the satisfying clusters and put them in my mouth, I feel a lesser emotion than when I merely desired and looked at them from outside the fence? Is it because the emotion of the mouth is inferior to the emotion of the eyes? Is it because the emotion of just imagining is always better than the emotion of actually experiencing it? To satisfy my greed, I only needed a few strawberries. Thinking that the wild strawberries, which grow abundantly in the fields and can be picked any time, are far better than the western strawberries inside the orchard, I climbed back over the wire fence. Trailing raspberries, wild raspberries, mountain raspberries, tree raspberries, black raspberries, bare raspberries, sweet raspberries, snake strawberries. When I discovered the sudden shadow of a person beneath the apple tree, I hurriedly tried to jump over, got caught on the wire fence, and tore my clothes. However, more than my clothes, the fear of being caught took precedence, so I dashed frantically through the grass. But coincidentally, I realized it was Okabun, and my heart instantly settled. Wasn't she, too, aiming for the strawberry patch? Hadn't she been peeking at the edge of the fence and hiding herself under the apple tree? While finding it strange that this was our second coincidental meeting after crossing paths oddly on the stream bank some time ago, my heart relaxed considerably. Going closer and striking up a casual conversation didn't feel awkward, it was natural. She too didn't act shy and easily accepted and answered my words. Our bizarre encounter from before seemed to have gently opened both of our hearts. Should I pick some strawberries for you? I'm scared. I don't know why her trembling voice drew my heart so strongly. I took hold of her trembling arm, passed through the grass, and went into the willow grove. Her lips were redder than the strawberries. She was certainly a temptation greater than the strawberries. I'm scared. There's nothing to be scared of. I comforted her, but in truth, I couldn't help my heart trembling violently, just as it did when I climbed the fence to steal strawberries. The moonlight seeped thinly through the willow leaves. Okibun didn't stubbornly try to resist. It wasn't the taste of western strawberries. It was undeniably the taste of wild strawberries. My heart filled with the fresh sensation of trailing raspberries and tree raspberries. No matter how accustomed I had become to my wild habits, was it really true that I felt no guilt or reflection, just like when picking strawberries over the fence? Wasn't I just like the pair of animals playing in the field? I couldn't suppress a single straight stream of thought asking whether this was proper, whether it was right. In the end, who could properly make the final judgment? Chapter 6. Days passed, but troublesome thoughts still spun in my head. To completely wash away my messy mind, I left the house in the morning carrying a net. Looking for a place to cast the net, I followed the stream of Namdaecheon upwards. Walking leisurely, I soon found myself nearly 10 miles up, past the railway bridge. I had intended to catch any fish that came my way, but finding myself there, a sudden desire to catch goby minnows sprang up. Among all fishing, goby fishing is the most elegant and exciting. Having succeeded a few times before, I knew its quiet charm well. I guessed a likely rapid, where many might be gathered, and decided to cast my first net. A stream snugly surrounded by mountains, the water is clear, and the sound of the water is clear too. The sound of the rapids rolling over stones rings brilliantly through the completely dust-free air and vegetation. Are the fish swimming in the water the mountain spirits? I stripped off my clothes, shouldered the net, and jumped into the water. Even though it was a season warm enough for bathing, because it was mountain water, it chilled me to the bone. Rather than feeling my mind washed clean all at once, I felt like I was freezing. I could say that the messy thoughts that had followed me for days had certainly lessened and blown away. But even so, I couldn't hide that one final thought was still piercing through me like a thin wire. Can the relationship between people be that simple? I found it suspicious that my connection with Ogbun that night was formed so ridiculously easily. Without any emotional transaction, persuaded by the moonlight and strawberries, she consented right then and there. Usually, the emotional negotiation between two people leading up to that point is incredibly lengthy and tedious when read in stories. So could it really be that simple? Is it simple out in the middle of the fields? Doesn't a question of responsibility arise? My thoughts unspooled softly again. When the water reached just above my ankles, I measured the water to cast the net, holding it open. The current was quite strong, pulling at my legs. The mossy stones were incredibly slippery, making it hard to step firmly. The murky, yellowish water made it impossible to see the bottom clearly. A few steps down was a rock, and below the rock was a deep pool. The breathing required when casting a net is as subtle as when shooting a bow, and I know from experience that it requires a kind of unified spirit and tense posture. Yet, making a mistake at that very moment meant that my ununified mind was undoubtedly cluttered, and my spirit unsteady, right up until the moment I cast. My body swayed and staggered, and the net, which should have flown in a wide arc, fell onto the water and tangled messily. My foot slipped, and as my legs were swept by the strong current, the net slipped from my hands and floated away. No matter how much a strong man struggles when falling into the water, he cannot stand straight up instantly. It was breathtakingly frustrating, but helplessly, my body was swept away with the flow. I hit a rock and eventually fell into the deep pool. I was completely submerged in the foaming waterfall, then popped up into the blue water and spun around. Luckily, because I knew how to swim a little, I was able to thrash about and escape the pool without too much suffering. There were several cuts on my face and shoulders. Blood beaded up. I saw dark bruises scattered across my legs. I had no idea which stream my lost net was buried under, nor did I have the courage to look for it. Of course, I didn't even get to hold a single goby in my hand. My ears felt plugged, and the water I had inhaled dripped from my nose. Looking down at my body, which had accidentally suffered this humiliation, I felt an inexplicable shame. Suddenly, Okbun's body and scent flowed before my eyes. Seeing my own body, which now held a secret, the feeling of shame did not easily fade for quite some time. Chapter 7. Munsu was ultimately kicked out of school. It was an indefinite suspension, but the result was the same as being permanently expelled. Thanks to this, I also permanently lost the books I had lent him. Munsu acted arrogant, saying he felt relieved, but the ones who weren't relieved were his family members. Harassed at home, he avoided his house and came out to spend more time with me. The stream of resentment splashed onto me too. I was unfairly painted as the bad guy who had corrupted him. Having no other choice, we spent our days befriending the fields. I had gained a good companion for the fields. When we stood on the grass, we raced. When we stood by the stream, we picked up flat stones and skipped them across the water. We threw the stones with all our might and counted how many times they bounced on the water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was the highest record. The further the stone rolled, the narrower and faster its steps became, until finally it vanished into the water with a blink. It was just like a train gradually moving further away, growing smaller, until it blinks out of sight around a mountain bend. It's a fun game. I picked up stones and tested them countless times without ever getting tired of it. When our arms drooped in exhaustion, we gathered our strength again, stood facing each other on the sandy beach, and wrestled. Our strength was equal, so our wins and losses were tied. We pushed, we did belt wrestling, we snatched at each other, leg sweeps, tripping. Our techniques seemed to be gradually improving. What is the greatest, biggest, most beautiful, most magnificent, and most correct thing in the world? Throwing out a random riddle, we'd answer, "It's strength." And laughing heartily, our insides felt as refreshed as if they had been washed out with water. Strength. Any kind of strength is good. As we wrestled, our understanding of strength renewed itself even more. While the strength of an organization is magnificent, wouldn't it be even more beautiful if the strength of the individual who makes it up is great? Chapter 8. Moon-soo and I went out for a stream fishing trip. Having lost my cast net, I had no choice but to carry a push net and sweep down the stream to hunt for loaches. We set up a pot in the field, boiled the caught fish, and cooked rice. When the food was almost ready, in the heat of the moment, we went in for a bath. After washing off our sweat and scrubbing ourselves, we went into the deep water to splash and play. Our pure, childlike hearts flew up to the sky with the splashing water droplets, then poured back down. When we came out to the bank, washed our faces, and were drying off, Moon-soo suddenly asked, "What's with the scars on your shoulders?" He pointed at the spots on my shoulder. I flinched, and the goby hunting I had completely forgotten about, and the related incident with Oakbun came to mind. I hesitated on what to do, but unable to hide it from him, I ended up telling him the story of the fishing trip and subtly hinting at the details regarding Oakbun. What was strange was his attitude. They're honorable wounds. He teased me and laughed heartily. After laughing, he suddenly stopped and said, "Since it's been brought up, it seems I have no choice but to spill my secret too." His face turned serious, and he unraveled his story. "Okay, Bun, I'm not a stranger to her either." Slapping my dumbfounded shoulder, he said, "Come to think of it, since her engagement with Dokchu was broken, her restless heart seems to have become reckless. It's a kind of self-abandonment. The bastard who deserves to die is Dokchu. Okebun's situation is pitiful." A strange emotion welled up inside me. Instead of feeling anger and jealousy toward Moon-soo, I actually felt a kind of relief and gratitude. It felt as though a burdensome responsibility had been avoided, like I had taken off a heavy load. My emotions lightened, and my tangled heart unraveled. Is this a cunning and wicked mindset? However, the key to the resolution lay in Okbun's reckless attitude of not considering me the only one, since it would be her attitude that must bear the final responsibility. "Why are you so quiet? Do you think it's a lie? You met her in the willow grove, but I met her in the grassy field." Remaining completely silent internally, I continuously thought about the nature of the fields and the magical charm of nature. Our conversation must have been quite lengthy, because the smell of burning rice pierced our noses. Chapter 9. The sweltering days continue. At times like this, it is even harder to pass the time in the village, and the fields are far better. We spent our days there, but we had never spent a night, an entire night, out in the fields. We discussed it and decided to camp out in the field for one night. Are the nights in the field fearful? This was because we had such a question. Moon-soo suggested that since we both knew about it, we should bring Okbun along from now on, so the three of us could become a group of children of the field. But I rejected it, calling it a kind of bad taste. I held the opinion that past affections should remain as affections, but for group living, 2 people are still the most appropriate, and if the number is 3, it will always lean and become unstable in any situation. But perhaps that, too, was ultimately because my wild nature wasn't thorough enough. Anyway, the two of us passed the daylight in the middle of the fields, waited for it to get dark, and welcomed the night. We built a fire and talked. Because our stories were so lengthy, by the time the fire died down, the lamps in the village were already all extinguished, and the sounds of dogs barking had quieted. Only the stars blinked, and the sound of the sea echoed faintly. The darkness is deep, wide, and infinite. Was the chaotic world before creation like this? Infinite silence. Even the sound of the earth rotating and revolving cannot be heard. Fear. From where does the emotion of fear come? It does not come from the darkness, nor from the silence. We deliberately brought up fearful stories, scary stories to test our minds, but no new feelings of fear arose. Above is the sky, below is the grass. There is only darkness around us, but ultimately it is all just a continuation and extension of the day. Our bodies do not get goosebumps, nor do our hearts tremble. We just blinked at each other until, exhausted, we both fell asleep at some point. When we awoke from our deep sleep, the morning sun was already high in the sky. The camping night was nothing but refreshing, and in the end, we failed to catch the bird of fear. Chapter 10. However, fear did come. It did not come from the fields, but from the village, from people. It seems that what creates fear is not nature, but human society. Munsu was suddenly taken away. It seemed to be the aftermath of the school incident. Soon after, I was taken in as well. I was questioned about various things regarding myself alone or in relation to Munsu. I spent 3 nights there and was released easily, but there has been no news of Munsu. It seems it will take a long time. We had made various fun summer plans, but alone there is nothing I can do. The loneliness of losing a friend you had is immense. I spend many days passing the time idly in the fields. I sometimes think about bringing Okabun along just to kill time, but it feels restrictive and troublesome in many ways. It seems better to keep things clean. Helplessly, I only hope from the bottom of my heart that the guy will get out as soon as possible. When he gets out, I plan to roast plenty of green beans for him to eat, scoop up lots of loaches to feed him, and wrestle with him to build up his body. In the fields, bellflowers are blooming, and the golden bells are splendid. The young bracken in the marsh has also fully blossomed at some point. A heron occasionally lands by the water in an elegant posture. The season has ripened deeply. You have been listening to Fields by Lee Hyo-seok. In this vast sea of green, perhaps you found a moment of stillness, a pause in the rush of life. Like the characters wandering through these fields, may you also find your own slow night, where you can rest, reflect, and simply be. Thank you for being here with us. If this story brought peace to your evening, please subscribe and share this moment with someone who needs a quiet breath of air. Until next time, keep your dreams as peaceful as the fields at night. Good night.